You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for March 18th, 2022. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where we believe the legend of St. Patrick driving all the snakes out of Ireland is just as absurd as the legend of Michael Steele driving all the bigots out of the GOP. It's the Professional Left with Driftglass and Bluegal.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
We are recording this on St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, we are. The cats are looking out the window, waiting for the humans to start hawking up hairballs all over the street. So,
I'm so grateful that the city of Chicago was able to dye the river green this year. We've missed that the past 2 years. So,
well, and the Chicago Bears screwed the pooch entirely. I don't know if you saw this.
No.
They put up a Happy St. Patrick's Day sign, which is fine. Then they decided to change the color of the river photoshopically to Bears color, which is orange. I don't know if you understand the history of Ireland and the color orange, but doing that on St. Patrick's Day is just about the most amazing, unforced, I think Athena Wise called it self-sack, I could think of. So, way to go, Bears.
Yeah.
You know, there are a few Irish people in Chicago you could have asked.
You could have asked about the color orange.
Yeah.
Yeah, being the color of Protestantism and oppression. Yeah. You know, 400 years of British oppression, right?
But hey, you know, you do you, Bears. I mean, again, it's not like there's a Daley who was a mayor and another Daley who was a mayor for the last, for 50 some odd years.
Yep.
Sure. Okay. That's great.
Some intern didn't know what they were doing.
Well, and the Irish parade in Chicago is like one of the big events. It's it's where every A-list politician goes.
Shows up. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I thought we would kind of have a theme for the beginning of the show, Driftglass. And I call it believing in your own bubble, which is illustrated very clearly by an interview that Idaho Lieutenant Governor Janice McEachin did with a very smart reporter. She sent a campaign speech video to the same Nick Fuentes conference that Marjorie Taylor Greene attended in person. You remember that Marjorie Taylor Greene said, well, I don't see why I shouldn't go to a conference where we all declare Christ is king. Well, you're also declaring that white nationalism is good and, America's being changed by brown people in a bad way, etc. I'm not going to repeat a lot of Nick Fuentes' conversations.
Look, the Nuremberg rally had a lot of people there who needed to hear my message. So, I went, I talked to them. They loved Jesus, and so did I. And what more did you need to know?
Well, and that's the bubble. It's like you need to totally remove any context of me speaking to, it does not imply endorsement if I go and speak to Nazis, right?
Well, as you know, I firmly believe context is the real fascism, Bluegal. Always has been.
Yeah. Well, Janice, who's the lieutenant governor of Idaho, demanded to see a manager.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
She only wants to be judged on what she said in her video and not that she sent the video by request to literal racists. But a lot of people noticed afterwards that, look, racism is kind of your thing, Janice. And you can tell from her own rhetoric about immigration. She talks about changing the face of America in a bad way. And she says things like, with these open borders, it's only a matter of time until we lose who we are.
Look, the black people are coming for your white women, okay? It's as clear as day. Archie Bunker couldn't have said it any better. Yeah. And she's the one who got cornered is not quite the right word, but got asked a lot of questions by an actual reporter. And just sweated off 20 pounds, just got real nervous. And really, she sucks at being a racist. because she doesn't know how to pivot immediately away. She tried to, well, the mainstream media is a mainstream media, but she looks so stupid and shifty-eyed and just pathetic and weak. And she's like, oh God, what do smart people say when they're in this position?
Right. And she wanted to say Reverend Wright,
right.
that why are we judging people by their associations? But Reverend Wright.
Yeah. You only do this to conservatives who go to white nationalist rallies and talk to Nazis. Yeah, well, that's a good point. We do a lot of that. Don't do near enough, in my opinion.
Singled out. Something weird happened on Twitter this week, Driftglass.
I was doing a retrospective on Mr. Matthew Dowd. I know that nobody cares about what anyone said ever in the past, and context is the true fascism. But I think there should be at least a few voices out there going, but wait a minute, this is the same guy who said the exact opposite just like 5 minutes ago. And so I have a pretty impressive archive of Matthew Dowd's many tweets back when Matthew Dowd was Matthew Dowd 2.0, before he became Matthew Dowd 3.0, who has disavowed is not true. It's not the right word, because he doesn't even acknowledge Matthew 2.0 existed at all.
Right.
He just suddenly became a Hillary Clinton Democrat one day, after spending pretty much the last previous, 12 years, certainly the entire campaign season of 2016, screeching that I've worked for both political parties and they're all corrupt and everyone sucks and you have to destroy everything. And you shouldn't vote in this election except third party or just stay home. And he just won't acknowledge he ever said shit like that.
Right.
He's a coward and he's a liar. And he's on MSNBC because that's where cowards and liars go. But I did have, and he deleted all these tweets. He just went back to his archives and blew them all away, which is fine. That's what cowards and liars do. But up until a few weeks ago or whatever, the plain text embed relics of those tweets would survive if you had documented them and put them in your blog or your magazine article or whatever. And you wouldn't see the fully rendered version, the fully picture and name and all that other stuff. But you could see the plain text and where it was from and who said it and when. And then Twitter decided, nope, that's too revealing. So
I don't blame Twitter, because that's storage space on their servers, and they don't need to. If someone deletes their own content from their account, I don't think Twitter should be obligated to save it. I really don't.
I don't know that it's deleted, though, because just for context, so you can go to my blog and look up a Matthew Dowd thing and see what he actually said in an unexpanded form, just raw text. But if you go there now, you just see a blank thing saying, look what's happening on Twitter. And you click on it, you just go to Twitter. It's as if nothing ever existed at all, except for a microsecond. It will show you what's on my blog.
Yeah.
It will
from the HTML.
It'll blink right past it. And then part of their new protocol is they will, because it's their code, it's their stuff, they will essentially reach into your blog and blot out the original text, which is still there, which still exists.
So you can edit your HTML. I mean, we're getting into the weeds here, but you can edit it to find the text of Matthew Dowd's tweets still.
Yeah, on my blog. So, I got around that by taking screenshots and pasting them together and just putting it up. But you can't get a JPEG, Twitter. But it is part of and I understand that people do delete tweets for lots of reasons. But Glenn Greenwald deleted his entire Twitter archive because Glenn Greenwald's a liar and a coward.
And
Matthew Dowd deleted his entire Twitter archive because he wanted to run for lieutenant governor of Texas. And he wanted a job at MSNBC, and his entire history argues against him ever having positions like that, because he thought Democrats are just as bad as Republicans and everyone sucks. You shouldn't endorse the system at all by involving yourself in
it's not Trump's fault or the Republican Party's fault.
No, it's everyone's fault.
Everybody's fault.
It's the corrupt duopoly. By the way, I'm running as a Democrat, and I believe in the following. Like, okay, you have no moral compass at all, and you have an actual platform. Back when you had millions of people watching you on ABC News as their chief analyst, you had a pretty big platform, and you used it to shit all over the political process and trash Hillary Clinton. And now that that's no longer a position you want to have held, you just lie about it. And your friends at MSNBC let you get away with it, because that's what we do now. But there was one little relic left, which is the fragment of the tweet embedded in Driftglass's blog
Yeah.
that says otherwise. And now that's gone too. So as these things come up, I will swap out screenshots of what I can see in the edit portion of the blog for what shows up on my blog. But it is part of this. Let's just vacuum up the past.
Yeah.
Let's just get rid of.
And a couple people on Twitter are like, boy, I'm really glad Driftglass is on our side.
Yeah. Well,
because you aren't going to let them get away with that. And I'm very proud of you for that.
Well, I do hang on to a grudge like an Irishman.
Like an Irishman.
Like an Irishman. And, I have a bunch of Andrew Sullivan's old tweets.
Yeah.
I have Glenn Greenwald's old tweets.
Oh,
I don't have all of them because Glenn Greenwald just
isn't it amazing how many people have seen the light on Glenn Greenwald?
Yeah, well, they saw the light, and then they like the part that bothers me, and I'll just leave it at this, is why didn't anyone warn us about Glenn Greenwald being an asshole? Why didn't anyone mention that David Brooks was a lunatic? Why didn't anyone ever say, well, there were people saying that, but those are the people who are automatically disallowed from the public square because they say things you don't want to hear.
Yeah. Because
you have invested deeply in your great love of David Brooks as a reasonable blah, blah, blah. And you don't want to hear otherwise. So because the story of the liberal blogosphere, whatever's left of it, tells about politics is not one that anyone in the mainstream media wants to talk about. I'm
absolutely convinced that all of that support traces back to we want our oil and gas and defense stocks to keep rising, and we want our tax cuts to be permanent. And so we cling to David Brooks because he is the arbiter of reasonable conservatism that allows us to keep all of that money for ourselves.
Even as, and this is the part that cracks some people's brains because they haven't read 1984 apparently, is even as part of your brain acknowledges that all that went before was bullshit because it all led to Trump, and something happened that made Trump possible. And that thing was the absolute debasement of any concept of morality or consistency or fair
ethics,
dealing,
journalistic ethics. Yes.
On the right, these were all necessary preconditions to create Trump. So something about our observations about the right must have been horribly wrong. Maybe there were people out there who weren't wrong. No, don't talk about that. But they still want to believe that somehow, some way, the Republican Party, they can see in front of them, with blood on its teeth, glaring at them, and clearly anxious to get rid of democracy at any cost, just isn't real somehow, or isn't, because their friend who lives across the yard from them and takes the Acela Corridor train with them, who's the tame, nice conservative, kept telling them, oh, that's not real. That's not a real thing.
Right.
Don't worry about that. And, well, my friend wouldn't have lied to me. We coach soccer together. Yeah. Well, your friend is part of the problem. So get better friends.
And I think we tend to focus and not want to blame the voters, but I do blame the voters
absolutely.
And the viewers for this. Eric Bollard has an article about the Dominion lawsuit this week.
Yeah.
And talking about how there were Fox News hosts, and we talked about this last week. The reason Fox News is still being sued is there's lots of evidence that Tucker Carlson, and now it turns out Neil Cavuto as well. Neil Cavuto cut away from a Trump press conference with the Trump press secretary saying, we can't cover this because there's no evidence as to what she's saying about the election results.
Right.
And so I'm not going to air that because it would be irresponsible to do so.
Awareness of guilt, yes.
Awareness of guilt. And Rupert Murdoch went along with that. This is what Eric Bollard is saying. Rupert Murdoch went along with that until the Murdochs saw that they were losing massive viewer share to Newsmax and OAN.
Yep.
And then it was, we got to go all in with the big lie because that's where our audience wants us to be. So this, oh no, the tail's wagging the dog here. And if we got rid of Fox, we'd somehow magic would happen and the brainwashed horde would wake up and the scales would fall from their eyes. No, the dog is wagging that tail. And the profits, it's about profit margins. I mean, you and I watched a couple weeks ago Network, which is on HBO Max now. If you haven't seen Network from the 70s, You need to go watch that movie because it is what happens when all that matters is ratings and profit to the news industry. It was so Patty Chayefsky got it and predicted exactly correctly.
And to take it back even further than that, I'm going to cheat a little bit by revealing my adolescent awareness and reading of Ayn Rand.
Ayn Rand? Oh, no. You're not going to read to me from Ayn Rand's unpublished manuscripts,
No, I have them all tucked away for a special anniversary. A little champagne, a little bubble bath.
When the kids are all gone.
And you know what? Property rights are the only rights. The Fountainhead is one of her novels. It's from 1943. It was made into a movie with Gary Cooper, which is an adequate movie, but there is a subplot in there.
Yeah.
Which a character named Gail Wynand, I think played by Raymond Massey in the movie. You can check me on that. I'm pretty sure. Runs a sleazy tabloid paper and has made a fucking fortune. And he's smarter than everybody else. He knows that the mob is a bunch of rubes to be fed idiocy, and so he has a life that is elite and full of quality and full of refinement. That's all paid for by this schlock that he pumps out the door.
Yeah, like the New York Post.
Yeah, exactly. Except there is no Fox News Network because it's 1943. But so the newspaper is the big deal. The banner newspaper is the big deal. And he thinks he's the opinion leader. And he just feeds them just garbage, racist garbage and gossip and trash. And they love it. And they pay him like a shit ton of money for it. And then he sort of gets it into his head that he's going to defend this rogue, free-thinking architect because he's going to shift public opinion. And so he starts publishing articles in his paper that his readers don't want to hear. And he finds out exactly who's in charge of that relationship because they decide, oh, fuck no. Oh, no. You're not going to tell us that smart people are good and quality matters. That's basically, you told us the exact opposite your entire career. You told us that we fucking pig people are God's chosen creatures. And now you're telling us that there's somebody better than us and we should listen to them. Fuck you. That was in 1943. And all these years later, Rupert Murdoch finally figured out that he doesn't control the mob.
Right.
He controls the mob by riding on its back and feeding it red meat. And the minute he stops doing that, it will rip his throat out and find someone who will give him what they want.
It'll find someone who will ride him and give them red meat.
Yes,
exactly.
Absolutely.
And there's always someone out there willing to do that.
There sure is.
But now they're all facing another corporation that has endless patience and attorneys who are willing to work on spec.
I saw this happening in real time in our community when Megyn Kelly ran afoul of the Fox News crowd. Right. I saw it. I talked to local wingnut pillars of the community who I'm sure used to jerk off to Megyn Kelly. That's why she was there. She's hot, blonde wingnut. She gives me a huge boner. And right about the time she decided to ask Trump questions,
cross Trump, right?
She's, she's almost, suddenly the same people say, she's almost as bad as that lesbian, that Rachel Maddox over on MSNBC. I like this bow tie guy, this ChuckGrassley guy. He seems to have it going on. Boom, she's gone, he's in. They didn't give a shit. As long as someone is there telling them the lies they want to hear. And again, let's be very, very clear. These people, there's no barbed wire fence. There's no machine guns. No one's forcing them to watch this shit.
There's a remote control right next to them on the couch. Right.
So either they are delinquent in their thinking. Either they're children or, lower orders of life that have no agency, have no control over what they do. They just poop their pants and they have in which case that's fine. Let's treat them like that. They can't vote. They shouldn't be able to vote. 40-year-olds can't vote. Or they're adults and we should hold them rigorously responsible, individually rigorously responsible for the decision they make. And the decision they make is to watch fucking Fox News.
And or OAN
and no matter how many times they get slapped in the dick over, and no matter how many lies blow up in their face, they always go back to the same liars. Yeah. So they ultimately...
Since at least Nixon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the voters. It's the people in West Virginia who won't elect anyone other than Joe Manchin. He's the only Democrat I'm going to ever elect. If he's not, and well, okay, then it's the fault of it's the Kentucky voters who put Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul in office over and over again. They're to blame. Your neighbors are the problem. So anyway, moving on.
I found this sentence astonishing in the New York Times. Trump-controlled committees entered 2022 with $122 million in the bank, far more than the Republican Party itself.
Oh, my. Oh, my.
Now, you can parse that out and say, okay, the RNC, if they're smart, they aren't hoarding money. They're using money and putting it in, Martha McSally for Senate or whatever. They're putting it in individual campaign committees and distributing it to campaigns and getting it out the door. And maybe that's the case. But I went and looked at Open Secrets and WinRed and looking to see where this money is going and where it ends up. And you can't look now at the 2022 campaign and Make America Great Again, because as this article was pointing out, Donald Trump hasn't announced yet.
Right.
And so he doesn't have to report monthly or quarterly on where that money's going.
And that, in our news roundup, we do point out that he is in violation of campaign finance laws.
Right.
Which don't matter because nobody ever enforces those laws anyway. Because
the Federal Election Commission is 50% Republican. Yeah. He's going to get away with it.
Sure.
But the fact that the Republican Party, the RNC, is paying Donald Trump's legal bills from 2015, and he has more money in the bank than the RNC has in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
It is so clear to me, and I've said this in every show, but I'm going to keep on saying it because no one else is saying it. Ronna Romney McDaniel and Kevin McCarthy are being held hostage by Trump's stranglehold on GOP fundraising and very possibly profiting personally from WinRed.
When has Donald Trump not put personal profit above everything else?
Right. And we know that WinRed was started. Jared made it happen. The reason that WinRed exists is because Shelley Adelson, after the 2018 midterms where the House lost 41 seats, when the Republicans lost 41 seats in the House, Shelley Adelson said, I'm not giving another dime until you put together a Act Blue for Republicans.
Yes.
You got to do online fundraising. We're in the dark ages here. You got to do online fundraising the way the Democrats do, or I'm not supporting you anymore. So Jared was put in charge of making a WinRed online fundraising machine.
Jared took time away from reforming the banking
Middle
system
East Peace
and fixing Middle East Peace to do this. Wow, he's an amazing man.
And then he borrowed the off-the-shelf software of Act Blue and made it for profit.
Uh-huh.
They scrape money off the top of every donation. And the donations that go to the RNC are clearly being spent on legal bills.
For who? For whom, honey?
Well, for Donald Trump, number one.
Oh,
number two, we have this in our news roundup, too. They're doing it to sue anyone that wants to give their data to the J6 committee.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So if you're giving just to the Republican Party right now, it's not going to help Republicans win. It's going to cover up for Donald Trump.
So you should definitely keep giving money to them.
Well, and I think this is why people like Joe Scarborough aren't talking about this, is they don't want to spook donors.
Right.
Because you spook a donor into thinking, oh, my money's no good. If I give it, I'm throwing away money, right? I'm throwing away money if I give to Republican causes other than directly in a check to the candidate I want to win. So I'll do that. I'll write a check, and I won't go through Ronna McDaniel because I don't believe in her, obviously. And they don't want to do that. They don't want to terrify Republican donors from keeping that money flowing. So I think that's why certain Republican media outlets don't talk about this. Don't want to talk about it.
Don't talk about the war.
Don't talk about the war. Yeah. Yeah. You have a quote from Julia Ioffe that you want to talk about?
Yes, I do. She's a Russian-American journalist. You see her nowadays talking about Ukraine and Russia with a great deal of expertise. And I think this quote was from MSNBC. I know she said it. I'm just not quite sure the source. But it's very relevant because it's when you're feeling all high and mighty about how do those Russians believe this crap, She said, every time I'm asked by Americans, do Russians really believe this stuff? As if we don't have the same thing happening here. You have 40% of the American population that was convinced in just 1 year that Donald Trump actually won the 2020 election.
Mm-hmm.
Propaganda works.
Yeah.
Repetition works.
And we know that Donald Trump announced his re-election campaign the day after his inauguration in 2017.
Yep.
He started the Make America Great Again super PAC for 2020 on November 9th of 2020, 2 days after the election.
Yep.
To raise money for legally, lawyers to allegedly, because who knows who he paid and who he didn't pay.
Right.
The idea was to raise money off of the outrage of losing. And, we've seen that happen before, but not to this extent.
Well, they were robbed, honey.
Well, and we had people donating to recount things with the Green Party and everything after 2016 as well.
Sure.
We didn't riot or try to overthrow the Capitol during the vote count.
Well, and that's it's the same fractal over and over again. But I remember the cry after the 2020 election, which is, you're just going to ignore the wishes of 70 million Americans. Well, all you've done is fuck over those 70 million Americans every time you've been in office. You don't think those 70 million Americans should have any voice at all. B, you lost. But it's like, no, but we shouldn't lose. We shouldn't lose because we are white America. And white America shouldn't ever have to face the prospect of not being in control. And that's why they became hysterical.
Yeah.
Because the idea that you can't just ignore me. And that's what they did. They pulled a, whatever that movie was.
Yeah.
Boiling Bunny movie.
Fatal Attraction.
Fatal Attraction. Thank you. And they decided, instead of, boiling a bunny, they decided to storm the U.S. Capitol.
Right.
But it's the same dynamic. It's this derangement that really, this narcissistic derangement that how dare you take power away from me? I'm the only, all of U.S. history says I'm the only person who should have real power in this country. And you're denying it to me?
All right. We got to talk for a minute about Hunter Biden's laptop. Let's sorry.
Let's call it HBL, okay?
HBL. I'm sorry that we have to talk about this, but It resurfaced this week as a story because we have to constantly create distractions in right-wing media in order to hide facts that are coming out about Donald Trump. And we certainly can't talk about the war. Like you said, don't talk about the war. Don't talk about how Paul Manafort changed the Republican platform in 2016 to make it friendlier to Russia about Ukraine. There are people that remember stuff, Driftglass. I don't know if you know that.
And they're just
so we got to talk about we got to bring on the computer repairman who allegedly has Hunter Biden's laptop onto Fox News and ask him with his Scottish tam on his head about Ukraine. And but then today, that was yesterday. Today, there's an article in the New York Times about Hunter Biden's laptop and the fact that, yes, it appears that this laptop, wherever it is and whenever it was, actually had emails on it that belonged to Hunter Biden, as the Russians would put something like that together.
Yes, they would. They sure would.
And these emails were verified by either by Hunter Biden or by one of his attorneys, one of his people, as being actually from Hunter Biden. So now you've got his emails. And here is the New York Times writing multiple paragraphs about this story because there is an investigation going on.
Right.
Not that anyone is going to be charged with anything. Right. Not that there's any wrongdoing. And the article is very clear that it's not clear there's any wrongdoing. It's not clear there's going to be an indictment. It's not clear that the grand jury has found anything wrong.
Right.
But there's emails and there's a laptop and there's an investigation. And we need to report on it. We have to report on it.
We have to report on it because 2016 never happened.
Never happened. And we were not caught with egg all over our face by Maggie Haberman's behavior. No, of course not.
Do you remember on Justified when Mags got mad at her idiot son for doing something stupid? And she basically had him put his hand on a stump and beat his hand to a pulp.
She said, I'm not going to do your shooting finger, but I'm going to break one of your fingers because you're an idiot.
Broke his hand. She won't break his shooting hand, but she broke his hand repeatedly. Honestly, there really needs to be something professionally similar to reporters who consistently decide, you know what, I'm going to do this.
And editors who decide that's worth column space.
The liberal New York Times. There has to be a mechanism by which those people are dragged out by their fucking hair into the public eye and made to answer, like that sweaty lady answering for the Nick Fuentes thing. Mm-hmm. Why the fuck did you think it was a really good idea to put this? Well, it's a story. Yeah, there's a million stories out there, but it has Hunter Biden laptop email. So you decided to run with it. Explain to me like I'm a child why this is important to talk about at this moment.
Right. And this is the point. What is there is that his emails, quote unquote, show Hunter Biden was extremely aware that his father was vice president of the United States at the time, that appearances mattered, that it would be a political nightmare for Joe Biden, his dad, if it appeared in any way that Hunter Biden, was benefiting financially or even just socially from his father's activities. And so the emails that he sent to colleagues and so forth were all about avoiding appearances of benefiting in any way from his father's office.
So you mean he discussed his father's office and benefits in emails? Right. What you're saying is, Bluegal.
And he worked very hard to avoid conflicts of interest between his business and his dad, period. He admitted on television in an interview with Jimmy Kimmel that the laptop might be his. And he and one of his associates cooperated with the Department of Justice and the grand jury to verify the emails on the laptop or whatever they have are his. Yeah. Kate Benner on Twitter said, the big takeaway in the Hunter Biden story is that the Department of Justice has struggled to find evidence to support criminal charges, even after it widened it beyond taxes, putting the department in a tough political bind.
Yeah.
None of that matters. The headline in Murdoch's New York Post today is, Hunter Biden had a laptop after all. How dare you question the veracity of our reporting when now the New York Times is saying the same thing we did.
This is the same Department of Justice that is having a real problem trying to overlook the fact that Donald Trump is sitting on a pile of criminal offenses that stinks to high heaven.
And so the lesson that the New York Times will never, ever learn is that column inches devoted to bullshit help the bullshit. And no matter how balanced your coverage is, no matter how carefully you're covering merely the activities of a grand jury, if you're covering bullshit, even if you're telling the truth about bullshit and calling it bullshit, you're just helping the bullshit factory because they're going to twist it.
Well, do you think they honestly don't know that?
Oh, I think they know that. I think they know exactly what they're doing. Yeah.
I think they don't care. Yeah. This is great
it's
for clicks.
Reporting. Yeah.
This has got a lot of traffic.
But again, I think it goes back to that theme of I'm in this bubble. I have a responsibility to my self-image as a reporting mechanism in the paper of record to cover these things and make it the paper of record as to what Department of Justice is doing without tainting it with opinions that come from the left or the right. Yeah, right.
Well, and that brings us to Adam Davidson of a journalist, a journalist person, famous for being on This American Life, Planet Money, and writing for The New Yorker. So he's not just a scumbag blogger like you and I. He's a journalist. He's a journalist person who has an audience and has many opinions.
And gets paid, apparently, by an organization. He doesn't have to bust for money.
No, there's no tip jar at the Adam Davidson blog site that hasn't been updated since 2007.
Okay.
No, that's not true. And this is what he tweeted, I believe, yesterday. I just watched a bunch of GOP political ads. I am embarrassed, even ashamed, that for years I reported earnestly about the GOP's free market-based vision. That clearly was a thin scrim over ethno-nationalism. I truly regret the error. I never noticed all the racists in the racist party. And Doug J. Balloon, known to far and wide as New York Times PitchBot, replied as follows. If it's any consolation, if you'd been sharp enough to see the truth, you'd have been stuck writing at a free weekly or small newspaper for the rest of your life.
Damn right.
That's where the smart people end up, not the New Yorker, other than Schottner, who's a reporter that he likes at the New Yorker. Then he followed up with, and that's why people don't give credit for these kinds of apologies. There's someone else smarter and better who should have had his career and who didn't because of the perverse incentive system in legacy media.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely fucking right. This guy got his job because he was willing to suck the free market dick of the Republican Party and ignore the fact that that was just a little tiny add-on to a monstrously evil enterprise that anybody who was an actual journalist and gave a shit about the truth should have seen coming for the last 30 years. But why trouble people's beautiful minds with facts that make them sad?
No, you shouldn't.
Instead, let's talk about free markets and open markets.
Well, if we don't want to do it, but that Driftglass, we could talk about book parties.
Let's do that, Bluegal. Let's talk at the book party. Let's all hobnob with each other and oh God, don't get me started on Bill Barr this week.
Well, I know, but this goes back to another book party way back in the day that Mark Halperin, remember his remember his book, The Way to Win?
I do remember that book. That he
co-wrote. And there was a book party where Hillary Clinton and John McCain showed up.
They did.
And all the NBC people were there. And, laughing and having a glass of wine and celebrating this book launch. And so to read Maggie Haberman's tweet from yesterday about Bill Barr and Mike Pence and Chris Christie all at this party launching Bill Barr's book in Washington, D.C., Lindsey Graham, Tom Cotton, Lachlan Murdoch, Pat Cipollone. And Bill Barr said that the Murdochs convinced him to go through with the book. And, of course, the Murdochs own the press that published Bill Barr's book.
Published the book.
So, and usually those presses are supposed to be independent, like get to do whatever they want, right?
Yeah.
The Murdochs convinced him to go through with the book, and Trump could have won if Bill Barr toned his book down. So, he's the hero of his own story, Driftglass.
He clearly is the best of us all, Bill Barr.
Bill Barr said he was glad he joined because Trump was getting stampeded on the Russian probe. And Maggie Haberman says, Barr saying the Murdochs told him to go ahead with the book in which he describes Trump as unfit says it all. They're building lifeboats, Driftglass.
Then he got all that free publicity, got to be interviewed by Lester Holt and other folks who didn't really press him on anything.
And said that he would vote for, even though Trump's unfit, he couldn't see himself voting for a Democrat.
Because the Democrats are monstrously evil. And this whole Maggie Haberman, who's clearly building herself a lovely luxury yacht of a lifeboat.
And taking Tom Cotton and Lindsey Graham and Lachlan Murdoch with her. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's part of the secret plan that only they know about, which is that Barr and Pence and Christie, the Republicans are slowly saying maybe they can move on from Trump. And if you listen like I do to Never Trump podcasts that have millions of listeners, and have a huge staff and have lots and lots of resources that we don't have because they're attached at the hip to MSNBC, which they privately hate. Not so privately hate. They really don't like having to depend on that liberal station, even though it's half former Republicans at this point or more. They have their plan is clearly to keep expanding the number of people who will be forgiven. Keep lowering the bar on what's acceptable to be welcomed back into polite society. Well, I don't hate you anymore because you said the mean thing about Trump, which is virtually identical to the case they made to the left, to credulous liberal outlets when they suddenly jumped off the Republican Party boat. Said, look, I'm not responsible for anything that happened before me. We have to agree to forget everything I ever said. Context is fascism. But I said a bad thing about Trump, so now I'm a hero of the resistance. Give me a job at MSNBC. Like, well, what about all the people who weren't fucking wrong? No. Those people don't exist. That's the past. Blah, blah, blah. Give me a job at MSNBC. So you saw a whole bunch of Never Trumpers flooding the network. Suddenly they're in the New York Times, the Washington Post, writing these columns about Trump just showed up and took my party away, and no one knows what happens. That's just terrible. And they become the default voice of the opposition. And at the time this was happening, while a bunch of my credulous liberal friends were saying, well, what about Stalin and us against Hitler in World War II? And there'll come a day when we'll fight all this out. But for now, everyone's a hero. Okay, am I a hero? Well, no, you keep seeing bad things about our allies. Yes, our allies keep saying bad things about me. What about that? What about the fact that we were right and they weren't? Oh, that doesn't matter. So my prediction at the time was, look, here's their plan. They get control of the narrative, which they now have, and they very gradually, and then not so gradually, expand the list of people who will be welcomed back into the fold until basically the only people that they're going to be pissed about is a guy named Donald Trump. Eventually, everyone else, maybe Paul Ryan, they kind of hate Paul Ryan, but Bill Barr, I hate his guts, and we'd have to have a man-to-man talk, but he did the right thing. And Mike Pence, he did that one thing that wasn't terrible, and he said a mean thing about Trump. So he's pretty much okay now too. Like, oh, you're reconstituting the entire Republican Party around yourself because you're the heroes, and it's going to be eventually everyone's okay, everyone's cool. You can all come back, and you can all be on MSNBC because now we run that shop. The only person we're not going to welcome back is Donald Trump and his family. And I'm watching that happen before my eyes going, how the fuck is it that only a few of us on the left see what's happening? That's the plan. The plan is we're going to keep talking about the extreme left and how the extreme left is terrible. Every Never Trump podcast has a segment where, my God, did you hear what the Berkeley School District did this week? An outrage. Because that's exactly the same as an entire political party being a fascist shithole. And they're positioning themselves as the reasonable center. They're bringing back all the assholes into the fold, saying, remember, the past doesn't count. The past doesn't count. We should all rally around Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, and that's our future. And they're going to, and it's going to end up being the Trump Republican Party is the right, and the entire rest of the Republican Party is the reasonable center. And between those two poles, all political conversation will continue. And the left will simply cease to exist as a voice anywhere in the media. And we're halfway there.
We really are.
And to prove my point, I do listen to Crazy Joe Walsh. And last week, I was watching Joe Walsh on the Twitter and listening to him, and Crazy Joe Walsh popped up with the following. Most Americans are not Trumpists. Most Americans are not leftists. How come there's not a political party for most Americans? The triumphant return of Both Sides Do It. Where's the party of the reasonable center? And granted, he got dragged because, that's an asinine thing to say, because most Republicans are Trumpists, which is why they nominated and elected Donald Trump. I don't know what the fuck you mean by leftist, because I'm a lefty, and I don't agree with Bernie Sanders some of the time. I like Elizabeth Warren. I'm pretty cool with Joe Biden. So we're all sort of a big tent over here. And we are the party for the rest of America. Your crazy racist fascist party that you were completely comfortable with until 2018, they're the bad guys. And so, but every one of these fuckers, every one of them, you'll hear in their voice at some point in public commentary almost every day, opining for a party number 3, a McCain-Lieberman party, if you will, an idealized centrist party where everyone's reasonable and no one's nasty or mean, like the extremes on both sides. And I just shake my head going, I can see it coming. You can see it coming. We can all see it coming. The only people who can't see it coming is the editorial board of the New York Times, who consistently promotes this shit, and the people who run cable news. They enable all this shit. They're enabling it, and you can just see where it's going. Anyway,
Driftglass, just as an aside, Iowa Senator ChuckGrassley today.
Oh, I heard about this.
Did you hear about this?
This is wonderful. It won't go anywhere. No. It's just
But he kind of forgot where he was and that there was a microphone on, I think, in a committee meeting. He told everybody, if we want to lower prescription drug prices, we got to do it this year, because when the Republicans take over, we won't be able to get anything done.
So, ChuckGrassley, the elderly gentleman from Iowa, I believe, who's over 170 years old.
71,000 years old.
Doesn't know where he is half the time, but Iowans seem to love him, so he keeps getting elected to the Senate. Now, let's you and I play a little game. You throw that quote at me going, what about your Republican senator said following?
Oh, your Republican senator said that Republicans don't want to fix...
No, he didn't. No. That's fake news. But it's right here on tape. Oh, you know what? Hunter Biden's laptop.
Yeah.
Well, why are you okay with Hunter Biden selling out America and
critical
his laptop and his father being...
What about critical race theory? I got to worry about my kids. Yeah.
And then suddenly, you know what the conversation has become? The extremes on both sides.
Oh, yeah.
Why can't we find a nice middle centrist ground between the extremes on both sides?
The Republican tax increases that Rick Scott is promising versus fixing pricing for your kid's insulin so he doesn't have to go without doses. Have you seen gas prices, Bluegal? Have you seen Joe Biden's gas prices, Bluegal? Why don't you inject gasoline into your kids' veins?
There'll always be a handy Joe Manchin to leap into the conversation and say, I don't think electric cars are a good idea.
and I don't want to wait in line for batteries like we had to wait in line for gas in 1973.
Yeah. What about 1900 when there were only 2,000 cars on the road? People had to buy gas at the drugstore. I don't know about that. Did they run on coal?
Yeah, right.
Because coal is great. Because I'm the senator from a state full of inbred morons. All I have to do is say coal and socialism, and they'll elect me from now until the crack of doom. Once again, the voters are the problem. But the thing is, the narrative going back and forth like this and swirling around and always coming back to both sides do it, it's not like it's a river that just flows that way naturally. It requires the Maggie Habermans of the world to force the conversation into a, let's talk about both sides. Let's talk about all the good stuff Republicans are doing. Let's talk about Hunter Biden's laptop. It requires narrators to guide it where they want it to go.
And it's a choice. It's a conscious choice from educated people who who know what they're doing.
Sure they do.
I want to say some good news. Share some good news.
Do that.
Joe Biden is working with federal agencies to fix the family glitch in the Affordable Care Act. Now, the family glitch, if you're in it, you know it, and it's complicated, but it basically has to do with if you're employed, your health insurance costs are paid by your employer, but whether they're affordable or not for your spouse has a lot to do with, they didn't include spouses, basically. And like I said, it's complicated, but the important part is it is possible for Biden to fix some really big things and steamroll over the Manchin Cinema wing and the 49 Republicans who are stopping everything.
There are still things you can do by executive order.
And so
absolutely,
House progressives this week have released a list of 55 things that they would like to see fixed, including reducing the cost of insulin. Yeah. I think that's a really good campaign plank to have.
I was listening to a competing liberal podcast, Pod Save something.
Oh,
right?
Whoever.
I'm not sure something. A couple of crazy college kids out on the East Coast. Who knows what they're all about? But they made a very good point, which is Democrats deliver is the stupidest slogan ever, because it doesn't tell people anything that they believe.
Yeah,
they look at inflation, they look at this and that. The Democrats aren't doing shit for me. What about all the stuff Joe Biden did for us? And then you're having a completely different conversation.
Right.
That this election needs to be a comparison, not a referendum on Joe Biden.
Right. Yeah.
And the campaign slogans you should all be listening to and repeating are coming from people like Rachel Bittencofer.
Yes. Right.
Republicans want to force your daughter to bear her rapist child. Republicans want to throw old people into the street. Republicans want to sunset Medicare. Shit like that. Real simple.
And increase your taxes because they think you don't have skin in the game.
Right.
Tell seniors that they don't have, because the Republicans think you haven't worked hard enough for your money and that you aren't contributing enough to the federal government. You need to be punished for that. And so they want to make you pay a minimum tax. Yeah.
And you and I can use words like sesquicentennial because we're smart. But when you're talking to people anything.
You really have to dumb it down to fourth grade level. You do.
Yeah,
You just do.
No SAT words are allowed.
She said that on Twitter. Rachel Bittencofer said no, and she caught me at that because Jen Psaki was tweeting, and Rachel Bittencofer jumped in and said, "Nope, no SAT words on this slogan."
Right. I wish it were true.
Part of the reason is not just the claim that voters are stupid. That's not it.
No.
If you use words that aren't fourth grade level, they don't get absorbed in the rushing by that everybody's doing.
Morning in America.
Yeah.
It's simple. You repeat it a million times. And you do that enough, and maybe, just maybe, you keep the lunatics from taking the government back.
Yeah. 50% plus one is all we need.
It's all we need, man. It's all we need.
And gain a few Senate seats, which I think we're going to do.
No hope.
The choice in 2022 is a tax increase from Republicans versus savings on insulin and no tax increase from Democrats. That's it. Yeah. We're thinking about putting together an awards show of some kind.
Yes, it's awards season.
Awards season.
And we suck at this because we don't want to take your votes, actually, or poll anyone, or we don't have any gift bags.
We don't have any agents. We don't have any agents hounding us, right?
No.
You've got to win this award. It'll set your career.
Got to do it. Now, the last award I won was Blogger of the Year.
2008, something like that.
I think it was a long time ago. It was pre-Obama, I think.
Yeah.
It was me and Andrew Sullivan. We were the blog of the year. I was the individual blogger of the year. And, that has made my career.
Yeah,
Bluegal,
sure.
Really. There used to be a lot of liberal blogs. There used awards. There was the Koufax Award.
Yeah.
And now, we just have receded into the background. So we're not going to pretend to revive anything. But we thought, here's a thing we should be talking about. Let's make it a kooky awards thing and solicit your opinions. And so we're going to try a best of times, worst of times award. And these are votes for people or trends that have stood out during this era of bad feeling. This is not whether they are good or bad. This is simply whether they have dominated the storytelling, dominated the narrative. And arbitrarily, you get to pick 3.
Okay.
So, and they're numbered. I didn't prioritize these. I didn't even research these. These were things that just occurred to me as I rolled out of bed. So, if like dolphins playing volleyball is on the list, it's because I was dreaming about dolphins playing volleyball. So here's the list. Number 1, President Zelensky. Number 2, Doug J. Balloon, New York Times pitchbot. Number 3, the triumphant return of independence, centrism, and both-siderism. Number 4, Jen Psaki. Number 5, Democrats in disarray. Number 6, Katie Porter. Number 7, Joe Manchin. Number 8, Stacey Abrams. Number 9, Glenn Greenwald. Number 10, COVID. And because 10 is not a sacred number, number 11, Hillary was right. Pick whichever 3 you think are the most dominant stories that have gone on for the last however many months you want, the last 10 months. Because President Zelensky was not in the headlines a month ago.
6 months ago, yeah.
And now there's probably arguably nothing more of a more immediate importance than the war in Ukraine. But this is up to you. Pick 3.
Or add some.
Or add some. Yeah, if we're missing some, I wouldn't be a bit surprised because, again, I just pulled this right out of thin air.
But it's the tale of 2 cities, right?
It is. The best of times and the worst of times. Because in some ways, this is the best of times.
Oh, I think in terms of technology, that's the amazing thing about this war, is you're getting video from all over, and it makes it real. The hell that is war is real because of video, like it was in Vietnam, but that was filtered through, CBS News.
Yeah, well,
this is
right now, you
on
and I
the
are sitting in
ground, real.
You and I are sitting in front of donated microphones on laptops in front of little cameras, none of which was possible.
Right.
A generation
when we
ago.
Started blogging, it wasn't possible. I mean, when you and I started blogging, this is the thing that just blows our kids' mind. There was no YouTube.
Nope. It wasn't embeddable. It just wasn't. No. YouTube didn't exist.
And when Barack Obama had his campaign provide embeddable code for his speech at Selma.
Whoa.
It blew our minds that Democratic bloggers could put Barack Obama's speech at Selma onto their blogs with working code. Just blew our minds.
Hey, the Netroots Nation convention in Chicago featured every Democratic candidate for president except one. I forget which one it was. Hillary Clinton showed up late. I think somebody told her everybody else is there. It had, as I recall, 150 plus journalists, international journalists.
Yeah,
it was a
because
big
the blogs were for a hot minute, just like the Women's March. The blogs were a big thing, and then they're not.
Then they're not. Well, then frankly, the mainstream press smothered them and said, we elected Barack Obama, so you guys got everything you wanted, and the Iraq War's over, and everything's fine, and now we have to talk about the Tea Party and independence. Right. Like, what? No. And then we're gone. Just like that, we're gone. But we're still here, and you and I are still podcasting, and we're still doing this blogging thing.
And we're not allowed to be depressed at the same time.
No. And
that almost happened last night.
It almost
both
did.
Depressed at the same time.
It almost
we
did.
Can't do that. That's very bad.
and we have archives, which is how I'm able to take screenshots of Matthew Dowd's tweets.
There you go.
And put them right back out on the internet.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway.
It really is. Hey, let's do a news roundup.
After you.
Last week, congressional leaders reached a bipartisan agreement to send $13.6 billion in new humanitarian, military, and economic aid for Ukraine. Biden called Putin a war criminal and said he will commit $800 million more from that package to direct military aid to Ukraine.
Ukraine President Zelensky asked the U.S. Congress for more help, telling lawmakers, quote, "We need you right now. I call on you to do more." The Ukrainian leader urged the U.S. to establish a no-fly zone over his country, a proposal the Biden administration and NATO allies have rejected, and asked for the delivery of advanced anti-missile defense systems. This is a terror that Europe has not seen for 80 years, and we are asking for a reply, for an answer to this terror from the whole world, Zelensky said. Following Zelensky's address to Congress, Vladimir Putin accused the West of trying to, quote, "cancel Russia."
Because everyone works for Roger Ailes' corpse, apparently.
We're the real victims. We only don't care. Yeah.
The International Court of Justice ordered Russia to immediately suspend its military operations in Ukraine, saying the Kremlin justified its invasion on the false pretext that Ukraine was committing genocide against Russian speakers in the east of the country, which they weren't.
This has all of the teeth of the Federal Election Commission pointing out that Donald Trump broke the law. It's unenforceable, but it's good to have it on the record. Russian Foreign Ministry sanctioned Joe Biden, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, and other top officials in response to sanctions imposed by Washington on Russian officials. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki shrugged off the announcement, joking that the sanctions wouldn't have much impact because President Biden is a junior, so they may have sanctioned his dad. May he rest in peace. Hillary Clinton ridiculed the sanctions on her, tweeting, "I want to thank the Russian Academy for this Lifetime Achievement Award."
According to a leaked memo by the Russian Department of Information and Telecommunications Support, the Kremlin has instructed the Russian state media to feature Fox News host Tucker Carlson as much as possible.
Yeah. This is going to be Glenn Greenwald's big break into Russian television. Many of Trump's claims about election fraud can be traced back to a November 2020 report on the Dominion voting system. You all know that. The report originated from inside the White House. The previously unreported involvement of the Trump White House aide raises the extraordinary situation of an administration official being among the original sources of Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. The publicly available version of the Dominion report names its author as Catherine Fries, a Trump legal team advisor, but was in fact produced by senior Trump White House policy aide Joanne Miller. This has been reported by The Guardian.
The Republican National Committee sued its own email vendor in an effort to stop it from complying with a subpoena from the January 6th committee for data on RNC and Trump campaign fundraising practices. They really don't want the J6 committee to see their emails. Also, whatever money you gave to the RNC Republicans is going to Trump's lawyers or the RNC lawyers to cover for Trump.
Yay. How does that winning feel? Feel like So much
Are you
winning. Your head's
tired of
gonna come
winning?
off. Yeah, I sure am. Sarah Bloom Raskin has withdrawn herself from consideration for the Federal Reserve position after all the Republicans, plus Joe Manchin, announced their opposition to her candidacy. Raskin previously called for stronger climate policies, writing last September that regulators should, quote, ask themselves how their existing instruments can be used to incentivize a rapid, orderly, and just transition away from high emission and biodiversity destroying investments. In other words, Joe Manchin, you fucked with his coal, and he's not going to have any of that.
Joe Manchin, who has taken more money in political donations from fossil fuel interests than any other senator, said he's very reluctant to see the proliferation of electric vehicles. He should talk to Ford Motor Company about that because they're going all in.
They are. Well, I did read much of the article, and it was like, back when cars were just coming out, you didn't see the government out there putting up electric stations all over the country to promote that. You're right, because there were 2,000 of them, and they bought them from drugstores. They bought gas. Gas was a waste product from kerosene. Of course, and what they were trying to do then was introduce a brand new technology that ran on something that people threw away otherwise, as opposed to replacing tens of millions of vehicles as quickly as possible with ones that won't destroy the planet. Now, I'm sure Joe Manchin knows that, but Joe Manchin is a whore for the petrochemical industry, always has been, always will be, a thoroughly despicable human being, and he's the senator from West Virginia. So there we have it.
The Senate confirmed Shalanda Young as director of the White House Office of Management and Budget, making her the first Black woman to hold the cabinet-level position.
Under the Trump administration, the 2020 census somehow missed 18.8 million Americans, the biggest net undercount in 3 decades. The Census Bureau said that while the overall population total of 323 million was accurate, it undercounted the number of Hispanic, Black, and Native American residents and overcounted white and Asian residents. Surprise, surprise. Donald Trump the Trump campaign violated finance law by spending his existing political funds on a 2024 presidential run without declaring himself a candidate.
He also, it's been discussed this week, realized by October that he wasn't going to win the popular vote. And he started very specifically trying to monkey with electoral votes in specific states. And you and I, this is one of the reasons you and I were both depressed last night. You kept talking about, what if we have a Republican president who loses by 10 million votes in the popular vote?
Yeah.
And it could happen. It could happen in the next decade or two.
It could. 15 million could easily happen.
The White House will be forced to end a COVID-19 program that pays to test, treat, and vaccinate people who don't have health insurance unless Congress approves more funding.
When he was finally forced to show up to testify before the January 6th committee, Michael Flynn took the Fifth Amendment, which reminds me of this 2016 quote from a guy named Donald Trump. The mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment? Good question, Donald. Why don't you ask Michael next time you see him?
CIA Director William Burns said Putin is angry and frustrated with his invasion of Ukraine and will likely double down with no regard for civilian casualties. Speaking before the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, Burns said Putin doesn't appear to have a, quote, sustainable political endgame in the face of what is going to continue to be fierce resistance from the Ukrainians.
Joe Biden has banned all imports of oil and natural gas from Russia, punishing Russia for its vicious war of choice in Ukraine. Quote, the United States is targeting the main artery of Russia's economy, Biden said. We will not be part of subsidizing Putin's war. Biden, however, warned that the decision would mean higher prices for energy and at the gas pump. He said defending freedom is going to cost. It's going to cost us as well in the United States.
Go ahead.
And I would just add that Joe Biden is out tweeting today going, the last time gas was $96 a barrel, it was $3 and something. Gas is the same price, and now it's $4 and 20 something.
Oil prices have dropped, yeah.
And why is that? How is it that back when it was this price before, it was $1 and something cheaper? Oh, maybe it's because oil and gas companies are making obscene profits and pretending that it's caused by inflation.
Maybe we need a windfall profits tax, Driftglass.
You know who would agree with you? Richard Milhouse Nixon. Yeah.
The first January 6th defendant to take his case to trial was found guilty of all 5 charges. Oh, man. Hate it when that happens.
Damn.
The jury found Guy Wesley Reffitt, A Texas 3%er guilty of leading a pro-Trump mob against the police at the Capitol, obstructing Congress's duty to certify the 2020 election, carrying a firearm during the attack, and threatening his teenage son and daughter to keep them from turning him into the FBI.
Look, that last one, how many times have we threatened these kids?
Don't turn me into the FBI.
Almost every day. Almost every day we warn them, don't turn us into the FBI. Whatever you do, don't turn us into the FBI.
Whatever you do.
And they roll their eyes and go back to whatever video game they're playing. Yeah, whatever, man.
I'm going over to my girlfriend's house to watch Euphoria.
Bullshit, you're going to turn us into the FBI, and we know it. A federal grand jury indicted the longtime leader of the Proud Boys with conspiracy to obstruct Congress related to the January 6th attack on the Capitol, making him the second leader of the far-right group to face charges in the past several months.
I love you, Driftglass.
I love you, Bluegal.
Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's Internet Kitty is a dog.
Aww.
Dog's name is Lola. We have met Lola and pet Lola.
Yes.
We met Lola face-to-face when her humans visited Springfield, Illinois, and had coffee with us a few weeks back.
Lola might be too good for them. I'm not sure.
Lola is a very good dog.
Very good dog.
I gotta say.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, Lola eats freshly poured pet food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve Pet Store Perfection or Dollar Store Direct, your pet will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured. Freshly poured. Freshly poured. Oh, my Lord, it's freshly poured. You can visit Lola at our Facebook page or our website, and you can send your Internet Kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. Hashtag it's time to fire DeJoy.
Can I break in here with a tweet from our Senator Duckworth today?
Tammy Duckworth?
Tammy Duckworth.
She's running for re-election, and I hear that she's doing very well in the polls.
I hear she's doing great, and this is a tweet from her today, on this very day. Now that the Postal Service Reform Act is headed for President Biden's desk, it'd be a great time to fire DeJoy to ensure the USPS has the right leadership it needs to deliver for all Americans. I couldn't agree with that Tammy Duckworth more.
That Tammy Duckworth. God bless her.
Does she listen to the podcast?
No.
Sounds like she does. Friend of the pod, Tammy Duckworth.
No? Not going to advertise friend of the pod.
Okay.
But she is our senator.
She is. She and
Dick Durbin.
Dick Durbin are our senators. And
we're very blessed in Illinois.
We're very blessed.
We really are.
She's wonderful, and and I wouldn't want to ruin her chance by implying that she's a friend of our podcast.
No, I don't think there's anything's going to ruin her chances of being reelected.
I don't know.
She works very hard.
Friend of Mike Madigan and Driftglass, Tammy Duckworth. Another one of Driftglass's cronies in Springfield.
That's the way the Republican ads go, though.
Yeah.
They really do. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job, and we love doing this podcast. Approximately 1% of our listeners support this podcast with a contribution. You can, too. We promise it will not go to legal fees.
Yeah. Does bail count as legal fees?
Bail counts as a legal fee.
Okay. All right. Then I cannot make that promise in good faith.
See our website, proleftpod.com, for details. We've got PayPal, postal address information, Patreon. It's all there at proleftpod.com. Please share our show on social media. And if you love this episode of our podcast, you can thank us by sending us $5 via proleftpod.com. We appreciate your support of our podcast work. Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Bluegal, the Internet Kitties think HBO's The Gilded Age needed a lot more cats and a lot less of everything else.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license, copyright 2022, DGBG Productions Incorporated.